Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a community meeting tonight on the proposed 60 kV transmission line for 1200 Memorex development, and we're going to get going. I wanted to, Joseph, are you able to advance us to the next slide? Thank you. So I'm Rena Brio. I am the Assistant Director of Community Development for the City of Santa Clara. And tonight's community meeting is related to a particular aspect of a development proposal that is under the city's consideration at 1200 to 1310 Memorex Drive. The proposed project on this site would demolish the existing 3 industrial buildings on the site and replace them with a new data center that's about 560,000 square feet in size, because it also includes ancillary office and storage. There's also a new electrical substation that would be included in this proposed project. And the development of the larger project, including the data center, is scheduled to be heard by the city's city council on November 9th. Tonight's agenda, however, is a much more focused discussion on this development. It's a subset topic. In particular, we are going to focus on an aspect of providing electrical service to this new development, specifically to the substation that's going to get developed. So notices for tonight's meeting were sent specifically to property owners that could be affected by a proposed transmission line extension to this new substation. Tonight, the city would like to hear your feedback on 2 alternatives to construct that new transmission line extension. One option could be a completely aerial extension, or the second option could be a largely aerial extension with a portion of the transmission line being undergrounded along Digilio Street. So we're going to get into those alternatives a little bit more. And first, we're going to provide a basic overview of the project. And then Silicon Valley Power staff is going to present the 2 alternatives as well as the staff recommendation. So in order to stay focused on tonight's meeting, we're not going to focus on all the aspects of the development project, but we know that those could be of concern to the community or individuals want more information about them. At the end of the PowerPoint slides, there will be my contact information. Once again, I'm Rena Brio. And please reach out to me, and I would love to set up time with you this week to get your comments or questions on the project development itself, which is the data center. But to get back to why we're here tonight, we're going to first pass it over to the project applicant, who's Rob Morris, and then we are going to pass it on to Silicon Valley Power. And at the end, we're going to take questions. And you can raise your hand through the Zoom webinar, and we will call on people at that time to ask questions, as well as, of course, to get your feedback more precisely on the alternatives that are going to be shared with you tonight. So I'm going to hand over this next part of the presentation over to Rob Morris, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Skybox. And he's going to be presenting the project and providing that really for everyone as context for what we're going to be talking about, which is the transmission line extension options. So Rob, if you are able to speak, we will move the slides over for you.
Great. Thank you, Rena. Good evening. My name is Rob Morris, and as Rena said, I'm the CEO of Skybox, which is redeveloping the former Memorex manufacturing campus and headquarters at 1200 to 1310 Memorex Drive. This facility is on 9 acres and consists of 472,000 square feet of data center, as well as 87,520 square feet of Class A office space. As Rena discussed, this project does require a new 60 kV service from Silicon Valley Power. Joseph, would you mind advancing to the next slide? Great. And you can actually, so there's the site plan there. You can see the layout. And Joseph, would you mind going to the next one? We have been working with Silicon Valley Power and the City of Santa Clara staff over the last 3.5 years to carefully design the redevelopment of this existing industrial complex into a beautiful new office and data center that will be a great addition and architectural enhancement to the city. Our company has a long history of building and operating within industrial districts and adjacent to residential areas. Our office and data center buildings bring incredible improvements to community safety compared to its current industrial users. This campus will be staffed with 24/7 security, watching day and night, and also providing dramatic reduction in existing traffic and parking requirements for the existing industrial uses. We are proud to be great neighbors in each and every one of the communities we serve, and we look forward to continuing that tradition and company culture here in Santa Clara. With that, I would like to pass the presentation to Alan Corritore with Silicon Valley Power to discuss the considerations for electrical services this evening.
Hi, this is Alan Corritore with Silicon Valley Power. So I'm going to talk to you about how we're going to provide service to this property. And I'm going to go into a little detail about the alignment. I'm going to give you some options on what we looked at in terms of the overhead alignment and a partial underground option. Show you some visual site renderings of the different alignments. And then again, the city staff recommendation specific to the transmission line. So first, what is a looped alignment? So on the figure here, you can see that we are connecting to I'll call the red line here, which is our proposed transmission line that will be a part of the upcoming development of SVP's system. As we will cross over Lafayette to Shulman Avenue, heading westerly toward Memorex Drive, south to Ronald Avenue, and then we'll have our first connection to the proposed site at the substation. I want to stop there because this is really where we really talk about some alternative alignments for Digilio Avenue. So staff has reviewed an aerial transmission line and an alternative line along Digilio. And I want to go into a little more detail on why we looked at these alignments and why they're different and how they may be different from what you see in other areas, industrial areas. So on the overhead alignment, we looked at replacing 4 of the existing wooden poles with taller replacement poles and 1 new wooden pole on a commercial area. So we'll have this section in the residential area under wooden poles. We also, as staff, had the developer provide a preliminary design for an underground alignment. That underground alignment would be a trench about 4 feet in width, between 8 and 12 feet deep, on the north side of Digilio Avenue, with placement of steel risers at the project site and also at the site at the northeast corner of Digilio Avenue in Lafayette. So I wanted to go through some of those details as well. Next slide, please. So here's a closer up look talking about the site itself. So on the left-hand side, the blue area is the data center development. The red box is the planned substation. So that is the location where the electrical services would go to the development itself. And you can see the loop lines loop back to Lafayette. Did want to, again, highlight the residential areas within this alignment, where we looked at the overhead option and also the underground option, strictly on Digilio Avenue. The other parts and parcels here are either commercial or industrial uses. Next slide. So let me talk a little bit about the overhead alignment. So the replacement wood poles would change in height from the existing locations from about 38 feet to about 20 feet higher, 57 feet in height. And the pole diameters of the wooden poles would also increase. Typically, they're out there to 12 inches, and we would see these poles increasing to 18 to 21 inches in diameter. All the existing distribution and communication lines that are currently on the pole would be transferred to the new poles. And no new easements would be required on the residential properties. So as we are looking to do this alignment to serve development, the aerial alignment here doesn't require any additional easements. The construction of an overhead alignment is pretty straightforward. It's about 6 to 8 weeks over a 4-month period of time. And the question comes up, why over 4 months? So typically a new pole installation would be installed adjacent to or right in the same location as the current pole. And then that takes about 3 days. So there's some localized parking impacts associated with that installation. So you would go down the street and every 3 days you would put in a new pole. And then later we would come and put the wires, either replacement wires or new wires. And then the communication companies and others, what we call pole attachers, would come and relocate their lines to the new poles. Next slide. So this is truly an aerial view. So this is looking easterly on Digilio. So I'm going to work from my right to left on this slide. So on the right-hand side would be the steel pole, which is about 4 feet in diameter, which is 65 feet, maybe 70 feet tall, and transition to wood poles as it goes easterly down Digilio. The one new commercial pole on the nearest to the site, and then we would have 4 sequenced wood poles that would replace the existing poles that are already there. As we go further down the street on the corner of Digilio and Lafayette, there would be a new steel pole on that commercial property, and then the alignment of the transmission line goes northerly on Lafayette. I'll give you some more information on the coloring just so it gives you some idea what's going on here. The yellow would be what we call the 60 kV lines. Those would be the new services on the taller sections of the new poles. And the light blue or cyan colors are the existing electrical services that are currently on those poles right now. So that gives you a real good view of what that would look like. And these are, again, on the existing alignment of the distribution system. Next slide. But wanted to provide some more simulations and renderings and also show you what we do in our typical installations. So working from left to right, this is a screenshot from Google Maps. And then we've had our designers provide a 3D superimposed version of what the new transmission wooden pole would be. And these are from actual ground level. So this is the perspective of the individual looking at this, perpendicular to that. We also wanted to show that this is really a standard installation for what we do for residential installations, following our current design standards. So this is on the right-hand side is a typical design. This is south of El Camino. I believe it's in the Benton area. So I wanted to show you what that would look like in a residential single-family location. And you can see the typical street lights in comparison to the poles itself. Next slide. So I'm going to go into some detail about the underground option. So the transmission line, we looked on the north side of Digilio Avenue. And this is a little bit difficult to read, but I think it's important that we go through it. So in the street right away, there's a lot of buried facilities, everything from storm drain that takes away runoff when we have wet weather events like we recently had. So there's almost a 58-inch, 5-foot storm drain underground. We have our sanitary sewer lines that collect the wastewater from the businesses and residents. We have the potable water lines in the street right away that provide potable water for domestic use, for irrigation, and for hydrants for fire protection. And there's also, and those are all city facilities. We also have other facilities in the public right of way. We have telecommunication lines that need to be buried, fiber optics, and then PG&E has its gas line also in the right of way. So just in looking at the map, there's as you know, that street is only 2 lanes with parking on both sides. It's a difficult street to work on. There's a lot of utility conflicts, and there also will be some significant water and gas service interruptions. So we, as staff, spent a considerable amount of time working with the consultants and looking at all these options. Next slide. So this is what we call a cross section. So not only we look at it at the bird's eye level, but also, subsurface and underground. So as we're looking at alternatives to put this proposed duct bank underground, it would require the relocation of the existing water main that serves the properties. So what that would entail is we would have to relocate the existing water main, provide temporary services through hydrants and others above ground to residents over a significant period of time. This is not what we would normally do under such longer periods of times. And then after the proposed duct bank would be installed, a new water main would be placed above the existing duct bank, closer to the edge of curb. So this is a significant operational issue during construction. And I also wanted to note that the city has minimum spacing requirements, standard spacing to maintain separation of utilities. So if in the event that there was an incident or issue need to be repaired, a sanitary sewer main that need to be repaired, a water main that may have burst, we'd like to keep those standards of 5 feet between these utilities, so we do not have issues of one utility impacting another. I did want to mention the gas main is under the sidewalk. So this is a typical cross-section of some of the considerations that we need to take a look at. Next slide. So here's some additional details. I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. So on the right, you'll see exactly what the type of construction we did underground for a mission transmission extension project. This was done about 2012, almost 10 years ago. So this is the size and scope of what that type of work would look like. And you can see it's a very significant shoring. You have a very deep installation. So there's a lot of, it's a heavy construction project. But let me go some additional details on the water line. So again, we'd have to remove the water line. The above ground surface would be necessary. What we would call temporary dead end water mains would be installed. So it's not, so that would have to be flushed and to maintain a good water quality. The construction timeline, as you would imagine, would be extended, so extensive. So that would be about 12 months in duration. And then since the water main would be out of service, the fire hydrants and fire services would be suspended. So a 24/7 fire watch could be required. So I wanted to point that out. The other part and other issues for the community would be access during construction. So, when they're working in a large trench like this, there would be really no access, vehicular access during construction, and no on-street parking during that stages of construction. After the end of the night, it's hard to see on this picture here, but they would put steel plates at the end of the night to cover it, to cover the trench itself, so that folks could have access. But again, wanted to show you what this looks like. Next slide. So when we look at this underground option, it's only partially underground. So it would go aerial as it reaches Lafayette. So, one of the requirements for even the underground is what we call a steel riser pole. It's required to transition from an underground situation to bring all those conduits, 8 conduits up to the structure. So this is on the right-hand side, you can see the location on Lafayette in the northwest corner of Lafayette and Digilio. It is a very large structure. It's approximately 85 to 90 feet tall. The pole would require a 8-foot diameter concrete foundation and a steel structure on top. So I wanted to show that even in the underground alignment alternative. Next slide. So in summary, when staff looked at the impacts of time, we really wanted to kind of highlight our summary recommendation. So on an overhead alignment, we're being very consistent with our city residential design standards. The construction activity is a much shorter time frame, much less inconvenience to the community, continues to allow residential parking, no additional poles in residential areas on this overhead alignment. We were using taller wooden poles to replace the existing distribution poles. And we are using, again, wooden poles in the residential areas. Other industrial areas along this alignment, we would be proposing steel poles, which is much more consistent with this construction. I want to provide you some bullet points again on the alternative underground alignment. Even if we went to that underground alignment, the existing distribution poles would remain. There would be a much longer period of time for the trenching, for 9 months for the trenching, and then you'd have pavement restoration following it. Extended restriction on residential street parking along Digilio Avenue and Digilio Court, just to get your vehicles in and out of that area. The water service interruption, as I detailed. And then restricted site access during construction. And I did want to mention the larger riser pole on Lafayette and Digilio Avenue. In the aerial option, the steel pole would be smaller in diameter and frankly shorter. Wouldn't have the tree-like effect, for lack of a better term, that a riser pole would have. So, due to the impacts, staff is recommending that we move forward with a standard aerial service that would match our current standards that we have in the community. As the underground option just didn't meet our standard clearances, was a substandard. So that's why we wanted to highlight the recommendation for the overhead alignment. Next slide. So this leads us to the questions and answers section, and I'm going to turn this back to Rena. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And just wanted to kind of, some folks joined our meeting a couple of minutes after we started. And I just wanted everyone to have some context for today's meeting, which there is a development proposal that the city is considering. And that entire project is something that we're happy to talk about, but we want to stay focused tonight specifically on the extension of the transmission lines. So my contact information is on this slide for anyone who would like to talk about the project, architecture, environmental analysis, anything to those issues. Please contact me, and I'd be happy to set up time this week to discuss those with you. But coming back to our topic for tonight and the presentation that you heard, we have a fair number of attendees here tonight. I can see 18 attendees, and I'm just opening this up really for questions to anyone who's participating in the webinar. You need to raise your hand and we'll call on you if there's anything about the presentation that you have questions on, or if you want to provide feedback on the two alternatives as well as the staff recommendation for the transmission line extension options. So are there any questions that people have? And as I mentioned, you can, at the bottom of the screen, if you're looking on a computer, simply raise your hand. I do see a hand raised. Shauna, I am going to allow you to talk if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. Very informative. My name is Shauna Alvarado, and I'm a lifelong resident of Santa Clara, California. Additionally, my family owns and runs a business in Santa Clara O'Donnell Plastering, a business I've proudly worked at for 26 years. O'Donnell Plastering is located at 2318 Lafayette Street in Santa Clara, just 2 blocks away from the proposed project, 1200 Memorex. And I'm here tonight to voice my opinion of support for the overhead electrical line alternative that utilizes existing infrastructure rather than creating the need for the disruptive new underground construction. As some of you may know, this area already has very limited street parking. A number of local businesses in the area depend on that street for the success of their business, including ours. We employ a number of workers who were constantly battling for just traffic and trying to get into work. The disruption caused by the underground alternative would not only be noisy, dirty, and disruptive to traffic, but it would eliminate much needed street parking for that length of construction. So again, as a resident of Santa Clara and a business owner in this area, I strongly encourage Silicon Valley Power to proceed with the overhead transmission line alternative for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. I do see another hand raised. Steve, I am going to allow you to speak. Hold on one second.
Hello. I hope everyone enjoyed the rain today. My name is Steve Boucher. I'm the owner of SOS Steel in Santa Clara on Richard Avenue, about a block from the proposed transmission line project. We've been at our location for 66 years since we moved from San Jose in 55. I've been with the company for 45 years. Today is my 45th anniversary with the company. I'm here to speak about the overhead electrical line option. I am in favor of it. We have usually 45 to 50 employees, most of whom park on our site, 2.5 acres in Santa Clara, but we do require some street parking. And I think that the underground option would bring a tremendous amount of additional construction and disruption to the roadways and would significantly impact the street parking during the construction. The above ground option would achieve the same goal of bringing electrical transmission lines to the area, but without the same level of disruption as the underground alternative. As a Santa Clara business owner, I feel like the overhead transmission line option is the right choice, and I hope you all agree with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I see Phil. I see your hand raised. I am going to allow you to speak if you'd like.
Good evening, Rena. Thank you very much for hosting this, and Alan, thank you very much for the presentation. A lot of information, good information there. My name is Philip Albanese. I'm the owner and president and CEO of Joseph J. Albanese. Joseph J. Albanese is a concrete grading demolition subcontractor that's been located in Santa Clara since 1955. We're actually third generation. For the last 66 years, like Steve, proud to be located in Santa Clara, proud with the neighborhood that we serve in the Bay Area and the community that Santa Clara is. I too, like Sean and Steve, are in favor of the overhead line option, mainly due to the fact that it causes the least amount of disruption between the two options. And as we all know, as was previously stated, just with parking in general, we have a number of employees and equipment and trucks right there off of Lafayette that use that area quite often. And disruption, the least amount of disruption is best for our folks and safety, and I think for the neighborhood in general. So, as a longtime Santa Clara business owner, I strongly encourage Silicon Valley Power to select the overhead alternative as it causes the least amount of disruption to our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. I see right now one hand still raised. And Shauna, that might be because I didn't lower your hand. Shauna, do you have another comment or? Okay, I see your hand lowered.
Yeah, I do not.
Okay. Chris, I see your hand raised. I am going to allow you to speak.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Chris Albanese. I am the owner and operator of 63 Trucking, located here in Santa Clara, California. 63 Trucking is a trucking company that serves Santa Clara in the Greater Bay Area, servicing with flatbed trucks, dump trucks, and the like. I'd like to voice my support for the overhead electrical lines alternative that utilizes the existing infrastructure that is currently at Digilio and the current site for the new project. The underground alternative would be very disruptive to the area, which would slow down on my operations of trucks. Difficult for my trucks to get to and from my business. And currently the underground is scheduled to take 9 to 12 months. And as some of us probably know, that construction projects normally do or could go over that, which would only progress or would only make this problem go on further. So as a Santa Clara business owner, I strongly encourage Silicon Valley Power to select the overhead transmission line alternative. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any other questions or comments, opinions? This is a good time for folks. I don't see any hands raised, but this is a great time to ask us anything. Is there any clarifying questions that people have too? Happy to take those. Okay, so we don't need to make it a long night. And I just want to thank everyone for their participation. I think staff are going to hang out a couple more minutes just to make sure, sometimes we have late folks who come to meetings and we want to make sure we do our outreach and get people's feedback. But I would say if we don't have any other questions, we will be kind of closing up this meeting pretty soon. So just last call for questions. Yeah, and I just wanted folks to know that this meeting was recorded and we're going to put it on the city's website. So if there are other people that you talk to in your, as I had started off this meeting, we were very specific in who we sent mailers to because we didn't need to get people involved who wouldn't be affected by the transmission line construction. But if you know of businesses that or properties, I should know, that you think this would be relevant to, you can send them to our website. If you put in 1200 Memorex data center, we will be posting this community meeting on that project website so people can take a look at it in the future. And as I mentioned, if you have questions on the larger project, don't hesitate to email me, Rena Brio, the way you spell my email address. Joseph, I don't know if you could put that last slide up again. Thank you. So you can send me an email and I would be happy to talk to you. This project is scheduled to go to City Council next week. So we want to make sure we get any questions answered by the community as soon as possible. So with that, thank you everyone. And thank you for your time tonight and all the feedback that you provided.